So yeah, I mean, one thing I love how you said personality types. One of the things I used to teach in the military was what we called the four lenses, and we called it enlisted professional military education. So part of that enlisted professional military education was to equip people over those 24 academic days with the tools they can use to become better supervisors. So not only the leadership, not only the communication skills, not only like the supervisory methodologies and stuff, but having people understand that other people have different personalities than they do. So the four lenses was really just like a breakdown. I think it was the science is all backed by Carl Jung. Like he talks about how four colors, quadrants, right? You got green, gold, blue, and orange. Green being the logical type of people, blue being compassionate, orange being excited, and then gold being more structure oriented. So being able to take the assessment on yourself and then understanding what kind of personality or predisposition you have, and then using that to understand others. So like in a room, I can always tell when I'm speaking or training or just with other people, I'm always kind of seeing it through those lenses. Hey, green, blue, orange, or gold. Is this person a little bit more logical? Well, then I can kind of tweak myself a little bit to make my message understood. Because we say maturity is essentially being able to convey your ideas, your beliefs, your thoughts in a way that resonates best with that person. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's so interesting that you're saying this because I've thought this a lot with some people that I know that I would consider very smart, and probably have a lot to teach. But when I see them try to explain things or whatever, sometimes it doesn't come off as, I don't know, as maybe you would think because they're so smart and
Yeah.
bright. And so now that you put it in that way, I think that maybe that might be the issue.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, well, maybe how you are isn't that's not how everybody else takes in
Yes.
information.
Yes. It's like, for example, if you say, for example, you are an orange when it comes to this four lenses thing, you're a little bit more excitable. You like to kind of just, you know that there's an end state, but you like to kind of just do it outside the box. If you're talking with someone who is a gold, a little
Yeah.
bit more structure oriented, likes to keep
Yeah.
to like a thing, checklist, you're going to drive that person fucking nuts because they want a little bit more order to the way things are. And that's okay. That's just what they prefer. It's just a preference. Like if I'm more of a blue temperament, if my temperament is more blue, compassionate, and you're more of a green, you're a little bit more logic oriented, or you prefer the logic over the compassion part, then I'm going to piss you off if I'm just always talking about my feelings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like understanding others. Well, I think it starts with understanding yourself, right? First, understanding yourself helps you understand other
Right,
people.
because you have to know where you're
Yes.
at, what
Yeah.
your strengths are or your weaknesses are.
Yes. And then when you're in a room with other people, if it's not just one-on-one, if I understand that maybe I have, just by kind of doing that communications counterintelligence, that's why I like to come to these meetings, come to everything a little bit early to talk with people before the briefing starts, before the training or the Vistage group commences. Just understand people, and I kind of hear them introduce themselves, what they're all about. And that gives me that counterintelligence to say, that guy sounds like he's a little bit more logical, maybe a little bit more green, or she's a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more blue. And then I have a spread of what's in the room. Okay, I got 4 greens, I got 2 blues, I got 6
Oh,
oranges,
wow.
and I got like 2
Wow.
golds, right? And now that I know what the spread out is like, I can adjust myself to what I would refer to as the nexus. What is the happy medium? How can I convey myself that best resonates with everyone's kind of like temperament, the average of everyone's temperament? So being able to find that sweet spot is super pivotal. Because if I come in there like super touchy-feely, that's not going to work with more than half the people in the room. See, that was the 4 lenses is really cool. I'm sure if you search like Shipley Communication 4 lenses,
Okay.
it's on there. It's like a $10 assessment, really easy to take.
I know that do you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is?
Yes.
So he
Oh,
talks
we're
a
on-
lot- he's
yeah,
like-
yeah,
Here we go.
Zach, you ready for
He
this?
put, he is such an advocate for self-awareness. I've heard some people asking him like, what's the number one piece of advice you could give people or whatever, and over he says self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because and it's one of the hardest things to do, like we talk about this all the time in that, here we're constantly striving to try and be self-aware and try and put our egos aside and better ourselves, because you have to have self-awareness to better yourself, because you have to know what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are. But that's really uncomfortable.
It is.
To put your ego aside, to recognize when your ego is present and when
Yeah.
it shouldn't be, or when maybe it's okay for it to be. It's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Do you find that you like deal with that with a lot? Like, do you find that simple or difficult for people that you work with to recognize, say, what color they are, or just have self-awareness in general?
That's a great question. So, like maybe two-part answer, right? In the military, that was hard because when you're wearing the uniform, that's your armor. That is your ego. The stripes you have on your. I remember at one time. I remember one time I had a supervisor. I didn't like him. He didn't like me. He wanted to do things a certain way. I didn't think that way was logical. I said, "Why don't we do it this way? It might be smarter, more efficient, and everyone kind of leaves home early today." He said, "Hey, let's play the stripes game. Cover it up." And we both covered up our stripes. I was like, "Okay, here we go. Cover up our chevrons." And he go, 1, 2, 3, expose. I got more rank than you. You lose. Ego, right? No, we're doing it my
How's that
way.
logic for you?
Yeah, right? So this whole ego thing, yeah, it is hard because when it comes to growth, the prerequisite to growth is yielding. It's surrendering. You can't grow unless you yield to something higher than you, better than you, just a power that's a little bit more above you. Once you're able to yield to that, that's when the mind opens up and that growth is able to come in. So I think one of the other prerequisites, or one of the things that makes growth or that ability to set the ego aside a little bit easier for people, is when you're in a room and they know they're safe. When they know they're safe, so that one of the things I love doing when I'm speaking or training is I like to create a safe environment. Like, I like to share who I am, but I like to just straight up tell people, man, like, this is who I am and I love doing this, and I'm not fucking perfect. I've had to yield a lot and I've had to grow a lot because there's so much yielding involved. There's so much surrendering involved to get to where it is that I want to be in my life. And if you can do that, that's going to lay the pathway open to growth. So the military is a little tougher. You got to have a solid relationship. And it's the same as like corporate world. No one wants to expose themselves just to everybody or to anybody, really. So doing it there was difficult. Now that I'm on the outside and I'm with other people that I've never even been with my entire life. I was in the military 11 years. Like, my adult life is just that. I've been wearing the armor. In fact, it's been like a challenge of stripping the armor away. You know, the moment I think I've taken off the mask, there's another mask, right? That's ego. That's essentially the ego. It's a protection. It's a defense mechanism. So yeah, it's been a challenge getting to that point, but as soon as you can strike that place with people, so much happens. And it's true for the high school students that I speak with. It's true for the seniors. It's true for the CEOs. If I can help them feel safe, the ego dissolves. If they don't feel safe, the ego goes right back up. So it's just like this give and take. It's always kind of like this ebb and flow of things. But if I can be authentic and I could be genuine and I can just be my best self and say to myself what I always say to myself prior to any class starting when I was a military instructor or any CEO group that I step into, I just kind of say, I'm not going to win with everybody in that room. But guess what? That's okay, because I wasn't intended to win with everybody. If I can be my best self and I can be authentic, I will resonate with the people that need to hear what I'm about to share. And that's all that matters. The ones that don't want to hear it, the ones that I'm not going to connect with, that's okay. Something else is going to make sure that they hear what they need to hear. And that something else is called life. Life has a funny way of breaking down the ego eventually.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.